Music. Good evening. I'm Eva Pilgrim. Thanks for streaming with us. It's day 2 of testimony in the Sean Diddy trial, and the prosecution's star witness, his ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, taking the stand. The disturbing video of Diddy and Cassie in an LA hotel hallway, one of the sparks that really ignited this case today for the first time in 6 years. Cassie coming face to face with Diddy, telling the jury in graphic detail about what they say is the darker side of the rap mogul over the span of their 10-year relationship. Cassie admitting she was young and initially wanted to make him happy by fulfilling his sexual desires, but quickly became reluctant. Ventura says the freak-offs took up so much of her time, it felt like a full-time job when she didn't cater to Combs's desires. He became violent and abusive, bashing and stomping her head at times in the courtroom. Hearing the explicit details of these sexual escapades, Combs' mother and children back for a second day in a row. Prosecutors argue Combs used power and fame to lead a criminal enterprise for 2 decades to allegedly abuse, threaten, and force women into drug-fueled sex marathons that lasted for days. Strongly denies all of these allegations. If convicted, Combs could face life in prison, a stark contrast to the life of luxury he's known for. He has pleaded not guilty to all charges. We'll take you inside the courtroom in just a moment for the emotional testimony, and we'll also take a closer look at Cassie Ventura, the singer and now star witness on the stand. Let's go to Aaron K. Tursky. He was inside the courtroom for all of it, and he joins me now from Lower Manhattan. Aaron, this was the first time that Cassie Ventura and her ex Sean Combs have seen each other since 2018. What was that moment like in the courtroom when she walked into the room? Sean Combs appeared to look at her, but she did not seem to look at him. And during her testimony, I'm not sure she really made eye contact with Sean Combs. She turned occasionally to her husband, Alex Fine, who was seated in the courtroom, had other members of her family, her attorney there in support. But she recounted such graphic detail, too graphic for us to discuss here now, in such soft-spoken matter-of-fact tones, describing degrading sexual activity that she said Sean Combs forced her into starting when she was 20. She called herself naive, too naive. She said to really understand what was going on or understand the power dynamics in the relationship, because she said if it turned him on, that's what they did. Her preferences weren't at all considered. And then she said she was passed around and objectified by men and with other men she didn't want to be having sex with on Sean Combs's whim, describing how he wanted to set up recording equipment to record these freak-offs. She said it made me feel insane. She said it was humiliating and disgusting. Aaron, Cassie shared that she didn't have a whole lot of sexual experience before she met Diddy. She was only 19 when she met them. There's a nearly 2 decades age difference between these two. Talk more about that power dynamic and how their relationship changed over time. Well, she was 19 and a young
and
singer,
no longer
and Paul
has a
signed
voice
her
who
to
will
a
pursue
10-album
justice
deal
for her
with Boy
accusation.
Records, so a
As of the
long-term
taken
deal.
against
She
Diddy,
said
no
that
expansion
she
of the
only made one
investigation,
album.
no
Otherwise, the
isolation
freak-offs
orders,
took up so
no
much of
equipment
her time
access,
that it
no
stifled her
suspension of
music
attorney
career,
communication.
but it controlled her
Everything
financially,
inside
she said.
solitary
So
block
she
C
felt like her
continued as
livelihood,
before.
her career,
Everything
her life
except
really
the fear.
depended on Sean
If a
Combs
female
keeping
warden
him
can
happy.
vanish after a
Otherwise,
single
she
note
said
thing
she
except
feared
the
what
fear.
might happen.
If a female
Now,
warden can
interestingly,
vanish
she
after a
talked
single
lot
note,
about not
ones who
wanting him
once
to
worked
break up with
overnight
her.
in
Now,
that
whether
area,
that was because
the
she
ones who
thought he
filed
might
for
get
leave without
violent,
giving a
or
reason,
because she
the
would
ones who
lose some of
saw
the
but
life
never
that she had
spoke.
acquired.
No one
She
mentions the
didn't really
note,
say,
but
we know
everyone
that
knows
the
it
defense is
appeared.
expected to
And if what
argue
it says
that,
is true,
sure, Sean
then
Combs
punishment.
and Cassie had a
Part 3.
toxic, violent
The person no
relationship.
longer in
The
the system.
defense has
The
called
internal
her a
personnel
strong adult
database of
woman
the Atlanta
who made a
Federal Detention
voluntary
Center
choice.
updated
Aaron,
its weekly
you were in
roster.
that courtroom.
Under the
These
category
details
Special
were a
Personnel
lot.
Code
What was the
Adjustment,
jury's
the
reaction?
name of Warden
Hearing her
TD was
testimony,
marked
it's
as
really
removed
hard
from
to read
system
the
by administrative
jury.
order.
Most
There was
of
no
them
decision
are
number
pretty
recorded.
stone-faced.
It was
There was one
deactivated.
woman who did
Her
seem to
personal
be
contact
following
information
along.
disappeared from the internal network exactly 36 hours after she filed her complaint. The changelog was executed from the system's highest access level server A device bearing the identifier DCCA1, located in the coordination office on the fourth floor of the Security Administration Wing.
Listening to what amounts
Only
to the
two individuals
humiliating
possess the
recollection of
authority
a
to
decade's
perform
worth
a
of
system-level
woman's
personnel
sex life.
removal at
Aaron,
that tier,
what can
the
we
head of
expect to
Federal
see in
Human
court
Resources
tomorrow?
and
More of the
Detention
same.
Center.
Cassie Ventura
No
ended her
confirmation
testimony
exists
today,
as a patient
taking
was
jurors
made.
to a moment
The removal
they've
of Warden
already seen
TD's name was
video
not
of what
accompanied
happened
by
in the
any
Los Angeles
or
hotel
protective
in March of
reassignment.
The jury had already
At
seen
11:20
the video,
a.m.,
but
a
they
printed
saw it
copy
again
of the
with
personnel
Cassie
deployment
narrating
chart
and
was
saying,
generated
"That's
in
me,"
preparation for the
pointing
new
to
week's
herself
schedule.
on video,
Under the section
telling the
marked
jury this was
Internal
the
Alert,
first time,
TD's
the first
name
and only time she tried to escape a freak-off before Sean Combs declared it over. She said she got hit by Combs, she had a black eye and she wanted to leave, but when she tried to, as the jury saw in video, he dragged her back. Aaron Kursky for us there at the courthouse. Aaron, thank you so much, and let's break all of this testimony down and what it means for this case with ABC News legal contributor and trial attorney Brian Buckmeyer. You were also in the courtroom. This testimony, the details of this testimony from a legal standpoint, what stood out to you? So from a legal standpoint, there are a few quotes I want to look at that I think kind of run the gambit of what we're talking about here. We have Cassie Ventura here, and some of her quotes saying here, after the freak-off, the room was pretty bad off, the candle wax, the all over the place, and then she described having a pungent smell, and she brought us into those rooms in a way that made us think, no one wants to be in there. The only way you can be in there is to be compelled. I think that fed into the government's argument of coercion, but we also heard something that I think the defense is going to jump on, where she talked about that she was insanely jealous, and we remember from Tenny Garagos, she said that this case was about love, infidelity, jealousy, and money. And so I think something like this, Sean Conn professing to be a man of many women, Cassie potentially being jealous, and maybe starting some of those fights or participating in the fights, that's something the defense is going to jump on. And then, of course, this saying that she's super young and naive, people pleaser, getting her personality. I think her testimony really drove home the idea that this was a horrible interaction, that it was a toxic relationship, as Aaron is quoting the defense. But also, I think there's something that both sides will be able to use from her testimony, that she was trafficked, as a government is arguing, but also that this could just be a domestic violence case where the defense might be able to argue not these crimes, other crimes he's guilty of, maybe not guilty of trafficking and racketeering. She also talked at some length about the control that he had over her and the other people on his staff that helped participate in that. Why you think that was so important? All right, so I think the smart thing to do, like start off, is talk about Cassie's age. She's 38 years old now. Sean Combs is 55. The age gap was one thing they touched upon, the fact that she was his singer and signed on to his label as a singer, and she had done some modeling in the past, and that he had the ability to control whether or not her music got out. We also saw the testimony about who was in his inner circle. We saw her talk about bodyguards and chief of staff, and to Aaron's point, she was very matter-of-fact and soft-spoken when she spoke, but what I saw when she talked about those bodyguards and saw pictures of them, and it's almost like she started to tremble in her voice a little. You can see a sense of fear as she recounted who the people were, where if she didn't pick up the phone right away, someone would come and find her, and I think that really colored the idea of this criminal enterprise. Again, you were in the courtroom today. What was the jury's reaction hearing all of this? I think as they continued to watch, you saw some people feverishly taking notes in the back, but I think as the testimony continued and everyone was really leaning in, listening, there were somewhat stoic. I didn't see anyone really like jaw-dropping about some of these allegations. Of course, you saw some people, as we see in the reports, shaking their head as to some of these statements, because they were very, very horrible and hard to listen to at times. At the very beginning of the day, we heard from a male escort that testified that he saw Combs attack Cassie. What stood out to you about his testimony? Yeah, and so
Xavier Donaldson
present,
was a defense
and no longer
attorney
has a voice who will
continued the
pursue justice for her
cross-examination.
accusation.
And what stood out to me
As
is,
of the taken
I
against
think they're
Diddy,
still kind of
no
attacking
expansion of
this
the
strategy
investigation,
attacking
no
her
isolation
credibility
orders,
as well as the
no
idea of
equipment
consent
access,
here. And so
no suspension
from
of
there
attorney
were two
communication.
things. One,
Everything inside
Philip
solitary
or
block
Daniel
C
Phillips
continued
said
as
that
before.
he actually had
Everything
feelings
except
towards
the fear.
Cassie, and there
If
might
a
have
female
been,
warden
again,
can
this
vanish
issue of
after a
jealousy
single
that
note,
I
nothing
think
except
Diddy
the
tried to
fear.
hone in on.
If a female
But,
warden
of
can
course,
vanish
the
after a
government
single
came
note,
back
ones who
and
once
talked
worked
about just
overnight
the
in that
brutality
area,
of Sean
the ones who
Collins'
filed for
interaction
leave
with
without
Cassie,
giving a
the
reason,
directing of
the
the
ones who
sexual
saw but never
encounters,
spoke.
who got paid,
No one
how
mentions
they
the
got
note,
paid,
but
and
everyone
again,
knows
just
it
the
appeared.
brutality of the
And if what
interaction
it
that he
says is
saw with
true,
them.
then
Brian
punishment.
Buckme, thank you
Part
so
3.
much. We'll come
The
back to
person
you
no longer in the
just a
system.
little
The
bit.
internal personnel
Cassie
database of the
Ventura's
Atlanta Federal
testimony
Detention
today,
Center
detailing
updated its weekly
graphic
roster.
allegations
Under the
of
category
domestic
Special Personnel
violence,
Code
which she
Adjustment,
said she
the name of
experienced
Warden
while dating
TD was
Sean
marked as
Collins'
removed
violence
from system
that the
by
defense
administrative
admitted
order.
to
There
in
was no
opening
decision number
statements. To
recorded,
talk
but
more
was
about domestic
deactivated.
violence,
Her
let's
personal
bring in
contact
criminal
information
defense
disappeared
attorney
from the
and
internal
ABC
network
News
exactly
legal
36 hours
contributor
after she
Bernardo
filed her
Verona,
complaint.
who has handled
The change
sex
log
crime
was
cases,
executed from the
and
system's
former
highest
NYPD
access
sex
level
crimes
server,
detective
a device
Sarah
bearing
Matz,
the
who
identifier
also notably worked on the
DCCA1,
Harvey
located
Weinstein
in the coordination
investigation.
office on the
Thank
fourth
you
floor
both
of
so
the
much for
Security
joining with
Administration
us.
Wing.
Bernardo, let's start
Only
with you.
two
The defense
individuals possess the
admitted in
authority to
opening
perform
statements
a
that
system-level
Collins got
personnel
violent,
removal
but
at that
say
tier,
doesn't
the
mean he
head
was
of Federal
trafficking
Human
people.
Resources
So
and
does the
Detention
violence
Center.
matter here? The violence
No
absolutely
confirmation
matters
exists
here,
as patient was
because it's
made.
the violence
The
is what
removal of
actually
Warden
quieted
TD's
Cassie as
name
to
was not
say
accompanied by
anything
any
for all the years.
or protective
Look how long it
reassignment.
took her to finally
At
say
11:20
something,
a.m.,
and
a
that's
printed copy of the
common
personnel
issue that you
deployment
see
chart
with
was
domestic
generated in
violence
preparation
victims,
for the new
with
week's
sexual
schedule.
assault victims,
Under the
because it
section
takes them
marked
a long
Internal
time.
Alert,
Number one,
TD's
to
name
realize that they were victimized, and two, to have the courage to come forward and actually to speak to other people about what happened to them. But three, look what happens behind closed doors. You just never know what happens behind closed doors. So this violence, this her being scared, is all a part of the violence and the crimes that took place here, and what the prosecution is moving forward in front of this jury piece by piece. Sarah, you've investigated a lot of cases. How does violence factor into these types of situations? Well, I think this shows just what Shan Holmes was capable of, and it just shows the toxicity that was surrounding Cassie Ventura in her life. I think being a man of power and having the financial means that he had, and having the control over her, I think that all just led into this whole situation where now she has the strength to stand up in court and to speak her mind and state the facts and tell everyone happened. And she is strong, and she was a victim, and now she's able to, speak up for herself and show the world that she's strong and that she's able to come over this and excel in her life and move on. Bernardo, we saw text messages between Cassie and Diddy today. The defense already said they think the messages showed the consensual nature of their relationship. I'm curious though, what's your reaction to those text messages? So when Cassie was testifying about the text messages, she also put it into context as to why she sent those text messages. What was going on in her mind that she wanted to satisfy Sean Collins, that she wanted to be a part of this, in the sense of that she was scared that if she didn't participate, what would happen to her? These are also common signs of people that are domestic violence victims, that are sexual assault victims, that you see ultimately going to see later on during the trial an expert come in and testify as to how and why victims like these react the way they do and are capable to send these texts that may look consensual to other people, but when you break it down mentally, you're able to see that this is a victim, person that is broken, a person that has been tainted, a person that has been brainwashed as a result of the violence and the control that Sean Holmes had over her. Sarah, Cassie didn't come forward until 2023 with her civil suit, years after this relationship ended. In your experience, why do victims wait to come forward? Well, every victim's story is different, and some victims respond to trauma differently, and with this situation, maybe just out of fear. Like I said, he had full control over her, full control of her financially, and just based on her reputation, society the emotional aspects, the psychological aspects that she's had to deal with. So these things take time. And she's doing it now, and she should be proud of herself. And we'll see how this pans out. Sarah, Matters, Bernardo Vallona, thank you both for being with us. Still ahead, prosecution versus the defense, the strategy from both sides when it comes to Cassie's testimony and the portrait they're trying to paint of Sean Diddy Combs. We'll be right back. Music. Welcome back to ABC News Live, Day 2 of testimony in the Sean Diddy Combs trial. His ex-girlfriend Cassie Ventura taking the stand, revealing never-before-heard details about days-long drug-fueled sexual encounters with prostitutes. Cassie saying if she refused to participate, Combs became violent, and that the freak-offs became a job where there was no space to do anything else but to recover and just try to feel normal again. Our ABC News legal contributors, Brian Buckmere and Bernardo Vallona, are back with us. We're going to have y'all take sides today. Brian, you're the defense. Bernardo, you're the prosecution. Brian, let's start with you. If you were the defense
and no
attorney
longer has a
sitting there,
voice who will
hearing
pursue
all of
justice
these
for her
details,
accusation.
What are you thinking if I'm
As
the
of the
defense?
taken against
I'm
Diddy,
actually not
no
that
expansion
worried,
of the
'cause in a case
investigation,
like this,
no
they've
isolation
already
orders,
conceded that
no
there is
equipment
allegations
access,
of
no
domestic
suspension
abuse
of
and
attorney
violence,
communication.
and I'm waiting to
Everything
see the
inside
government
Solitary
make
Block
the
C
connection
continued as
between this
before.
is simply a man
Everything
and a
except
woman,
the fear.
especially a man,
If a female
because
warden
we're
can
hearing
vanish
that the
after a
violence,
single note, thing except
from
the
Sean
fear.
Combs
If a
onto
female
Cassie
warden
just
can
brutally
vanish after a
abusing her,
single note,
hitting her,
ones
all
who
the
once
things that
worked
we said
overnight in that
were
area,
indefensible,
the
but
ones
we're
who
not
filed
seeing
for
the
leave without
connection
giving a
of was
reason,
this force
the ones who
used to
saw but
compel
never
her to go
spoke.
across state
No one
lines
mentions the
for
note,
trafficking,
but
or
everyone
was
knows
this
it
simply
appeared.
a
And if what it
man
says is
who was a
true,
voyager
then
who liked
punishment.
to participate
Part
in
3.
these sexual
The person no
escapades
longer in the
that we may
system.
not
The
agree
internal
with.
personnel database of
But,
the Atlanta
in
Federal
the
Detention
course of
Center
that, he
updated
used
its weekly
violence.
roster.
So
Under
I'm
the
looking to
category
try to
Special
slice
Personnel
this
Code
with a
Adjustment,
scalpel
the
rather
name
than
of
come in
Warden
with a
TD
hammer
was
and
marked
just
as
kind of
removed
pick
from
the case
system
apart.
by
Little
administrative
violent.
order.
Bernarda,
There was no
how do you
decision
think
number
the
recorded,
prosecution
but
did
was
today?
deactivated.
What are they
Her
trying to
personal
do here?
contact information
So,
disappeared
the
from the
prosecution
internal
is
network
definitely
exactly
laying out a
36
picture, a
hours
story of
after
the
she
life of
filed her
Cassie
complaint.
with Sean
The
Combs,
changelog
and
was
especially
executed from the
violent nature
system's
of it,
highest
but then
access
the
level
sexual
server,
nature of
a
it.
device
And
bearing
I
the
think what they're
identifier
doing is piece by piece,
DCCA1,
they're laying
located
out
in
all
the
these
coordination
freak
office
off
on the 4th
moments,
floor
and
of
now
the
they're
Security
starting to get to
Administration
the
Wing.
nitty-gritty part.
Only
Meaning
2
the
individuals
most
possess
extreme
the
ones,
authority to
the ones
perform a
that shock the
system-level
conscience.
personnel
For
removal at
example,
that
when
tier,
she
the head
mentioned
of
that
Federal
Sean
Human
Combs would
Resources
have her
and Detention Center.
participate in these
No
freak-offs
confirmation
when she
exists
was
as
on her
patient was
menstrual
made.
cycle.
The
I think
removal
that
of
right
Warden
there shocks
TD's
the
name was
conscience,
not
and the
accompanied by any
prosecution did a great
or
job
protective
in ending
reassignment.
with that line of
At
questioning to
11:20
show
a.m.,
the
a
jury
printed
that,
copy
look,
of the personnel
this is not
deployment
just
chart was
domestic
generated in
violence.
preparation
This
for
is
the
not
new
just
week's
people
schedule.
having
Under the
consensual
section
sex.
marked
This is
Internal
the type
Alert,
that no
TD's
one will
name
want to engage in, and Brian, the defense, has admitted that Combs had non-traditional sexual preferences. Cassie at one point was on the stand, flipping through a binder of escorts that they used. We can't even say out loud some of the things that occurred on this show. Do you think the defense can really convince this jury that Cassie and these other alleged victims wanted this? No, I don't think so. I don't think that you can take any of these allegations and say, of course Cassie wanted to do, and again, go and read it, because some of the things we're not allowed to repeat. But the brutality, the coercion, the arguments, the slapping, the dehumanization of what allegedly happened to her, I don't think anyone's going to turn around and say, well, that's just abnormal sexual encounters. But I think the defense can size up it and say, yes, that's a crime. You know, we call that rape, abuse, sexual assault. Look at the indictment and see if any of those are listed in the indictment. They're not. And I think the defense is going to try to sidestep them and say, where's the trafficking? Where were these allegations used to traffic her? Where's the criminal enterprise, and not just an inner circle or an organization of Sean Combs to help facilitate him getting from point A to point B and doing the things that he likes, even though they're state crimes and not federal crimes. I think they're going to try to sidestep it and argue somewhere else. Bernard, I have to ask you about these details. The prosecutor is literally asking her about every little thing, down to what these rooms looked and smelled like after these freak-offs. the number of baby oil bottles used each time. Why do you think these details matter here? So, Eva, the devil is in details. When you're determining credibility, when you're determining believability, you want the witness to try to give you as much details as possible to determine whether that person is telling the truth. So that's why the prosecution is heavily focusing on these details, because in the end, this case rises and falls on the testimony of Cassie Ventura, and in order for the jury to find a credible and believable, they have to look at her testimony as well as a demeanor, as well as anything that corroborates her testimony, and evaluate all of that to determine, in fact, whether Sean
Combs is guilty of these crimes, so the devil's in the details, so they have to get it out. Brian, as a defense attorney, how do you handle a cross with a witness like Cassie without taking off the jury? Personally, I don't do it. I think I would first hire someone like Bernardo Villalone. Think that defense is doing something very similar to that. One of the women attorneys are going to cross-examine Cassie Ventura for a number of reasons. One, this is a woman making allegations of sexual assault on that of a man. And two, she is pregnant. The optics of that would look horrible if someone like me does this. But I think the other aspect of it, from a technical standpoint, very careful. Don't raise your voice. Don't get into an argument. Be as soft-spoken and careful as her, but be deliberate in your words and trying to say, you said this one day, and now you're saying this another day. So, which one is it? Don't get into a battle with her, because you're not going to look good doing so. Brian, Buckmeyer, Bernardo Villona, thank you both for being with us. Coming up, who is Cassie Ventura? A closer look at her time as an emerging star in the spotlight to the star witness in the case against Diddy. Stay with us. Music. Welcome back. Cassie Ventura is the star witness in this case against Sean Diddy Combs. But before all this, she once shined as an up-and-coming singer who had a recording contract with Diddy's label Bad Boy Records. Tonight, a look at Cassie, who she was and is. For that, we turn to R. Kelly Carter, who covers entertainment and pop culture for us. Kelly, take us back to 2006 when her first album was released, and Cassie was just starting to make a name for
and no
herself.
longer has a voice who will
Cassie
pursue
Ventura.
justice for her accusation.
Let's go back even a little
As of the
bit
taken
further
against
to
Diddy,
really put into
no expansion
context,
of the investigation,
because in 2004
no isolation
you have
orders,
Sierra
no
dropping her
equipment
debut
access,
album in
no
2005.
suspension of attorney
Rihanna
communication.
drops her debut
Everything
album
inside solitary
2006.
Block C
Cassie
continued as
comes
before.
around and drops her
Everything
debut
except
album, and
the
really
fear.
the landscape
If a
was
female
very
warden
ripe
can
for
vanish
R&B
after a
pop
single note,
princesses
thing except
to
the
kind of
fear.
take over.
If a
And
female
she
warden
really
can
looked as
vanish
if
after
she
a
was
single
gonna
note,
fit quite
ones who
nicely
once
along
worked
what we were
overnight
hearing
in
on
that
the
area.
radio.
The
And
ones
what we
who
were
filed
seeing
for
in
leave
music
without giving a
videos.
reason.
She
The
was
ones who
discovered
saw
by
but never
Ryan
spoke.
Leslie, who is
No
a
one mentions the
songwriter
note.
who has
But
written
everyone
hits for
knows it
people like
appeared.
Beyonce,
And if
Britney
what it
Spears,
says is
and of
true,
course,
then
Sean
punishment.
Combs.
Part
And
3.
it seemed
The
as
person
if
no
all of
longer
the
in the system.
ingredients
The
were
internal
there for her
personnel
to fit
database
quite
of the
nicely
Atlanta
in this
Federal
scope
Detention Center
of the
updated its
R&B
weekly
music
roster.
scene. From
Under
no
the
women,
category
so
Special
it
Personnel
sounds
Code
like she
Adjustment,
was such
the
a
name of
promising
Warden
young
TD
star.
was marked
What
as
happened
removed
here?
from system
You know,
by
what happened
administrative
is
order.
we kept
There was no
waiting for
decision
more
number
music to
recorded.
come.
It was
You know, when that
deactivated.
first album
Her
came
personal
out, it
contact
lived on
information
the top
disappeared
20
from
for
the
a
internal
couple of
network
weeks,
exactly
but it was
36
like nothing.
hours after
You know,
she
what
filed
you've
her
been hearing
complaint.
a lot in
The
today's
change log was
testimony is that
executed from the
she
system's
signed
highest
this
access level
10-album
server,
deal with
a
Bad Boy
device bearing
Records,
the
but
identifier
only one album came out,
DCCA1,
and for the
located
longest
in the
time,
coordination
people
office
kept
on the
waiting
4th
to
floor
hear
of the
more,
Security
see
Administration
more,
Wing.
what was going to become
Only
of
two
her,
individuals
because we
possess
saw
the
her on
authority
red
to
carpets,
perform a
right?
system-level
And then we
personnel
had to
removal
wait
at that
about
tier,
6
the
years
head of
after
Federal
that
Human
debut
Resources
album from
and
her
Detention
drop to
Center.
get her on a
No
Nicki Minaj
confirmation
track,
exists
and I
as
thought
application was made.
maybe that was
The
gonna,
removal
you know,
of
bring
Warden
some new
TD's
music
name
from
was not
her.
accompanied
We
by
kept
any
hearing
or
Sean
protective
talk about how she
reassignment.
was constantly in the
At
studios
11:20 a.m.,
working
a
with
printed
producers,
copy of the
but we
personnel
really
deployment
weren't
chart
hearing
was
any new
generated
music,
in
and
preparation
certainly
for the
no
new
new
week's
albums.
schedule.
Cassie,
Under
as
the
we have
section
been able
marked
to see,
Internal
is very
Alert,
pregnant
TD's name
right now, about to have her third baby. What more do we know about her life now? It seems very quiet, far more quieter than it was when, of course, she was with Sean, because we were seeing, as we keep rolling, a lot of red carpet footage, a lot of event footage. It's a quieter life, and it seems very sweet. He is someone who often makes a lot of proclamations on social media, on Instagram, about how he wishes the days were longer so that he could have more time to spend with his sweet wife, who is the bestest, in his words, the bestest mama that could ever be. And they're about to have their third baby. So it's quiet and obviously much more regulated. Kelly Carter, thank you as always for being with us. Thank you, and thank you so much for streaming with us. We'll be back with new episodes every day of the trial right here on ABC News Live, Disney Plus, and Hulu, weekdays at 5 Eastern. For even more on the Diddy trial, make sure to follow our podcast, Bad Rap: The Case Against Diddy, hosted by our very own Brian Buckmere on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you listen. I'm Eva Pilgrim, New York. Have a good rest of your day.